This video is about how to factor out the greatest common factor, or the GCF. Let's get started. The GCF is the greatest common factor, meaning that it's the biggest thing that can divide all of the terms. Okay? You will always, for all factoring, start with the GCF. All right, so the first thing you will always look for any kind of pattern, no matter if you have 2 terms, 3 terms, 4 terms, or more, the first thing you always look for is there a greatest common factor? Okay, if there is, it'll often make the problem much more, so much simpler and easier to do every other pattern that there may be. To factor out the GCF, you want to find the greatest number that divides evenly into each term and factor out the highest multiple of each variable. So we will look at both number factors, the GCF for the numbers, and the GCF of the variables. And really, if you have multiple variables, we'll look at kind of each letter separately. Okay, the first one's kind of done for us. We want to factor 3m squared plus 9m plus 27. Okay. Now the first thing we'll do is we'll look for a greatest common factor, a GCF. Okay. Now looking first at the number, we're looking at the number 3 and the number 9 and the number 27. Okay. And it looks like 3 is the number that divides all those coefficients. Okay, and then I look at the variables. I have m squared. Let me change colors here for a second. I have m squared and m and nothing. Okay, which right here tells me that there is no GCF, there is no greatest common factor that includes the variable m, because this last term doesn't have any m in it. Okay, so the GCF, for example 1, is the number 3. So I will factor out that GCF. Okay, and I ask myself 3 times what is 3m squared? And the answer is m squared. Okay, and 3 times what is 9m? Well, 3 times, let's see here, 3 times 3 is 9, and then it's just 3 times m would be 9m. Okay, and then 3 times what is 27, and that's 9. Okay, so the factors are 3 and m squared plus 3m plus 9, and it's written like this. Okay, let's do 2 more just so you can see it. Let me erase this and scroll up. In example 2, we want to factor 12r cubed plus 4r squared minus 12r. And we'll always start with the GCF. In fact, that's the only tool we have right now. Okay, so I'm looking for the greatest common factor, and I will first look at the numbers. I have 12 and 4 and negative 12. Okay, and the greatest common factor of those numbers is 4. 4 divides 12 and 4, so 4 is the greatest common factor. Now, looking at the variables, I have r cubed and r squared and r. Okay, and they all have at least an r in them. Okay, so 4r is my greatest common factor. So factoring out that greatest common factor, I ask myself, 4r times what is 12r cubed? Well, let's see here. The number 4 times what is 12, and the answer is 3. And then r times what is r cubed, and it's r squared. Okay, so 4r times 3r squared is 12r cubed. Then 4r times what is 4r squared? Well, I already have the 4, so I don't need a coefficient here. Let's see here. R times r is going to be r squared. So 4r times r is 4r squared. Okay, the last term, 4r times what is negative 12r? Well, I have that negative sign, so I got to have a minus here, so I get a negative. Let's see here, 4 times what is 12, and 4 times 3 is 12. Okay, and then r times what is r? Well, I don't need an r there because I already have an r. So 4r times negative 3 is negative 12r. Yep, that's right. So the factors are 4r and 3r squared plus r minus 3. And you typically write it the way you have it there below in green, but in this fancy schmancy box, we have 4r times 3r squared plus r minus 3. Okay, let me give you one more example of this that gets a little more complicated. And that is example 3, negative 18x cubed n squared plus 15n squared n minus 15x. Now, the first thing we do is we look at the numbers. We have negative 18, and we have 15, and we have negative 15. Okay, and the number that divides all, basically 15 and 18 is the number 3. Okay, now I will let you know that for all of the other tools that we have to work with, okay, all the other tools that we have that we'll learn about later on, that the leading coefficient has to be positive. Okay, so if this leading coefficient here is negative, we will pull that out with the GCF. Okay, so negative 3 will be my GCF, so the thing I have left, which is more complicated, will have a leading coefficient that's positive, and all of our other patterns assume that your leading coefficient is positive. So that's an important piece to be aware of. Okay, now looking at the variables, I have x's and n's. So looking at just the x's, I have x cubed and x squared and x, and so I have at least an x in every term. For the n's, I have n squared and n and nothing. So because this last term has no n in them, that's not a common factor of all three terms. Okay, so my GCF is negative 3x. So I will factor out negative 3x from this trinomial. Okay. Now keep in mind that negative will be changing some signs here, so be aware of that. So negative 3x times what is negative 18x cubed n squared. Now that's a lot to think about. So let me first think about the number. Negative 3 times what is negative 18, and the answer is 6. X times what is x cubed, and the answer is x squared. Okay, and then I have no n in my GCF, so I need n squared here so that I will still have the n squared above. Okay, next I have negative 3x times what is positive 15x squared n. Well, a negative times a negative is a positive, so this next term must be negative. Okay, and 3 times what is 15? Well, 3 times 5 is 15. Okay, so, and then I have x times what is x squared, and the answer is x. And then I have no n in my GCF, so I have to have this n. Okay, that's this second term. Okay, now for the last term, negative 3x times what is negative 15x. Let's see here. A negative times a positive will be a negative, so I need a positive number here. 3 times what is 15? The answer is 5. And then x times nothing is x. Well, times 1 is x. Okay, so I just get 5. So negative 3x times 5 is negative 15x. So my factors are negative 3x and this 6x squared n squared minus 5xn plus 5. Okay, it's also written like it is here below in blue. All right, this video was about how to factor out the GCF, or greatest common factor. Thank you for watching.